A week of Texans training camp already in the books as the march to the 2025 football season continues. What are the best things so far through the training camp days? And what are the worst things about this Texans camp up to this point? I'll tell you all of them. Presented by my friends at DraftKits.co. Take your league to the top level with a customized, reusable draft board from my friends at DraftKits.co. Check out the description to find out how you get your discount. So the Texans have put in 6 good workouts to this point, 3 padded practices to go along with 3 other days of work and a walkthrough to this point. So what are the best parts and the worst parts of camp up to this point? Well, I'm a good news first type of person. So let's start with the 3 best parts of camp so far. Let's start with the big fellas up front along the offensive line. It feels like they're battling, okay? And that's probably the best that you're going to get from this offensive line. Because if I was walking in here and telling you they're locking things down, they're shutting things down, they've built the Great Wall of Houston, I'd be lying to you. They had some leaky moments, but this offensive line has had moments against what is a very, very good Houston Texans defense where they've been there for C.J. Stroud, where they have kept him upright. I noted a bunch of different times in my notes that Cam Robinson had just enough on a rep or good protection from the offensive line. And man, the best play of camp for the offensive line, they created the perfect half circle for C.J. Stroud to operate, and he put a glorious one on Christian Kirk for a big gain over the middle. They are coming together. They're putting in some combinations on a somewhat consistent basis. And Nick Caserio mentioned this week that they'd love to get this offensive line sort of settled ahead of that Vikings game or coming out of that first preseason game. So as you start to think about it and this offensive line battling, they're putting some of the same guys in the same spots day to day. It looks right now, if they had to play a game, like Cam Robinson would be the left tackle, Laken Tomlinson would be the left guard, Titus Howard would be the right guard, Ariante Ursery would be the right tackle, and a battle between Jake Andrews and Jared Patterson is still to be decided, but one of those two would be the center. So they're not taking their time to figure out who those guys could be as they put them in the same spot a couple of days in a row in the padded practices this week. Now, there's still a lot of training camp ahead. How they perform in the two-joint practices and however much they play the offensive line that is considered a starter potential offensive line in the preseason games, that will be very important for the Houston Texans. But they've shown a little bit, and we expected basically nothing from the offensive line. So I think that's a really good thing for the Houston Texans. That is a really good thing for the Houston Texans. And among those good things about the offensive line, I can see it with Ariante Ursery. When the big fella gets his hands on defensive linemen, he takes care of his business. He's done a good job of shuttling defenders past the quarterback a couple of different times. He's adjusted to some of the speed stuff that the first few days of training camp and in the offseason workouts he maybe struggled with a little bit. There's something there with Ariante Ursery for 2025, so I really like that. Something else that's been one of the best parts about Houston Texans training camp is the offense overall is pretty clear with the Nick Caley influence. They've shown some really fun and interesting and intriguing looks to this offense. Right off the bat, I think about the fact that Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz were stacked up next to each other on a pass play the other day, and Collins was lined up inside Dalton Schultz. We've seen guys in stacks motion and have the outside guy that many thought would be the slot guy continue to motion outside, and you sort of reverse the roles there with a slot receiver or a guy that you would think would end up as the slot receiver being outside and a bigger receiver being inside. They moved Jaden Higgins around a bunch, letting him win from the inside a couple of different times. Nick Caley's influence is apparent. And the way that these guys talk about Nick Caley and how excited they are about this offense, we know that Nick Caley is going to have a big impact on this Texans season in 2025. He had to afflict some change on this team, and it already looks like he's done a pretty good job putting in a base layer for his offense. Now, they got a long way to go. they're learning basic math probably in this style of offense before they've even gotten really to algebra or trigonometry or calculus or all those other math classes that I tried to avoid like the plague when I was in school. But Kaylee's influence is clear. Some of the motions as plays are happening, some of the multiple motions before plays, the alignments, you can start to see the offense have little bits of excitement in the schematic presentation of it. And I can't wait to see even more of it as they go against people that aren't members of their own organization, like in those couple of joint practices, one with the Panthers and one with the Lions, and seeing it throughout the course of the preseason games. Because even when the guys that you expect to be starters come out of the game, you'll still get to see portions and pieces of Nick Caley's offense out there on the field with Davis Mills, Graham Mertz, and Keaton Slovis operating it. So it'd be important to watch those preseason games and see if Nick Caley will tip his hand. He doesn't have to tip the whole hand, but maybe if we could just see a card or two in his hand, that sure would be nice for this offense. Another best thing for me about this training camp so far, young guys have shown up and shown out, and probably none highlighted better in that young guy showing up than Kalen Bullock. I mean, the second-year safety was excellent as a rookie last year, got his hands on a ton of footballs, and if he plays in the regular season like he's played in training camp through these few practices, well, he's going to get his hands on a ton of interceptions this year. He's been all over the place. He's gotten C.J. Stroud for an interception one time. He dropped another C.J. Stroud interception that would have been a pick six. He flew in coverage to help out Kamari Lassiter on Nico Collins the other day. Kalen Bullock has been really impressive as a second-year player, and I thought maybe there was going to be sort of a little tamping down of the expectations for Bullock as things got going. I think I needed to ratchet up the expectations for Bullock. Another young player that's had good moments. Obviously, Kamari Lassiter was good last year. He's still very good now. Over on offense, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, while it's not consistently present with them just yet, you can see flashes of how they could help the Houston Texans here in 2025. You can see Noel's quickness and how quickly he can get open against various types of defenders. You can see how Jaden Higgins' versatility as an inside-outside wide receiver allows Nick Caley to deploy him in a couple of different ways. His physicality, his ability to go up and get the ball, use his size to his advantage. A lot to like about the youngsters. And Jawar Jordan is another piece of the young guy crew that I want to highlight. To me, he's been the best running back in camp so far, catching the ball well out of the backfield, a couple of really nice rushes. It's not easy to run the football for this offensive line against this defensive line, but I really like what Jawar Jordan has brought to the table, and to a much smaller degree, second-year running back British Brooks, as well as rookie Woody Marks. Marks had really solid practices the final 2 days of pads earlier this week, so it's a good job to see those young players coming in and stepping into their opportunity and succeeding in their opportunities. The Texans are not afraid to put young players on the field. They shouldn't be afraid to put those young players on the field after the start to training camp that they've had. Let's get to some of those things that haven't been so great for the Texans right after I tell you about my friends at DraftKits.co. These guys are great. In fact, they are the best in the business when it comes to customized, reusable draft boards. I got my League One last year. Man, it is a beaut. It's huge. It's easy to see. We get the whole crew together. Everybody was pumped about it. And we're going to reuse that same draft board year after year. All you have to do is order the stickers new each year. And if you bought a customized draft board last year and you're reusing it, you still get the discount on just the stickers. And if you're ordering a brand new one, you get the stickers, or you get the discount and you get the stickers, and you get everything that you need to have the best in-person fantasy draft with your league. Man, these draft boards have tons of different size options. I got the biggest one we could get for mine, and the customizable ability that they possess at DraftKits is unmatched. You can put darn near anything as the background of that draft board. Check them out. Use Cody 25 when you check out to get that discount. The link is in the description down below. So these things haven't been the greatest, probably the worst parts to me of training camp. Let's start with the offense for the Houston Texans. No dominant day for the offense just yet. And it's not like they haven't had some success. They have. And I would go ahead and I would say that of the 6 real workout days that the Texans have had to this point, the offense has fought the defense to a draw, and they've scored themselves 2 wins against the defense in this training camp up to this point. But they just haven't put together 3 out of the 4 team periods or 2 out of the 3 team periods where they really took it to the defense. And that's really tough to do because the defense has a lot of familiar faces. They're excellent, they're fast, they're strong, and they're deep into their style and their scheme. Whereas the offense has a lot of new faces, specifically on the offensive line and blocking. They're lacking some of their talent over on the offensive side. No Joe Mixon up to this point. And they are learning and installing and putting together a brand new operation of the way that they operate the offense. So there's no surprise there that they haven't just gone out there and delivered a big KO to the defense. But I'd like to see one before training camp finishes because I think back to training camp last year. Look, this defense had high expectations in the 2024 training camp, but they basically went out there every day and kicked the offense's tail, and the offense never had a dominant day. That's something I'm looking for as training camp rolls on. Plenty of more practices, certainly opportunities in the joint practices to have dominant days on offense. That's what I really want to see from this offense, and I haven't seen it just yet because I have high expectations for them. Doesn't mean that it's the worst thing in the world, but it's the worst thing so far. They haven't delivered a big knockout blow on offense, and they've had a little trouble getting the deep passing game going. I believe all that's going to come around for the offense. I don't believe it's going to stick just like that for the offense, but it hasn't been knockout worthy just yet. Another thing, let's talk about the offensive line. Parts of the offensive line that haven't been great. Well, Blake Fisher has not been a great piece of this offensive line. He's had some really bad moments, including getting benched twice because of pre-snap issues or a false start or whatever it was. He got replaced by Zach Thomas a couple of times, and when he's been out there, it just hasn't looked good. Now, credit to Fisher. When he put the pads on, there was less things to criticize about his performance, but it still hasn't looked really good, and this is a guy that when the Texans were putting together 2025, I'm sure they were going to rely on Blake Fisher. They were going to think, hey, this is a guy we could trust. This is a guy we could put out there. And if they can't, then that severely injures their opportunity to maximize what this offensive line can be. It may force Ariante Ursary to start right away, which if he's better than Fisher, go ahead, start him. But it limits what they can do over at left tackle as well, should Cam Robinson not hold up. Another thing about this offensive line, it's not been great on the ground, okay? And I know that's only been 3 days of pads, and that's where you can really determine if the offensive line is going to be able to run the football with whoever the running back is, but it hasn't been great on the offensive line, and really it hadn't even been good on the offensive line. Now, it got better each of the days of pads, and that 3rd day of pads, there was a little bit more than there had been combined the first 2 days, but still wasn't amazing on the ground. And I'm still kind of looking for a day where the 5 guys come together, bulldoze the defensive line a little bit. And it may just be hard to bulldoze this defensive line. You got the 2 incredible edges in Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Tim Settle's played awesome so far in training camp. Feels like he's darting back there and knifing in to stop things constantly. So it's not an easy task, but it's something, again, I'm going to monitor for the rest of training camp in hopes that we see some positive signs and some growth. And let me tell you, 3rd day of pads looking better than the first 2 days combined on the ground. That's a good job. And Joe Mixon's going to help whenever he gets healthy. That's a rough part of the running back situation, as Mixon's injury taken longer than many thought that it would. But that's the not so great part of the offensive line so far. Finally, from the best and worst of training camp, the last piece that is the worst, this offensive situation was going to rely on Joe Mixon to run the football, and he's not going to be ready till close to the start of the season. Well, the guy that they brought in to be the backup and the guy that maybe in the new offense could fill that backup role, they have not been trustworthy up to this point. Dameon Pierce hasn't been on the field, and he's missed over a third of training camp now, and he's still on the physically unable to perform list, so there's nothing to note from him. And remember how hard it was for him to pick up a brand new offense, and this is a new offense, and man, Dameon Pierce has got to get out there and start trying to claw into that running back 2 spot, because it's really wide open, because Nick Chubb hasn't been very good. There just hasn't been a lot to like from Nick Chubb's carries and runs. D'Amico Ryans mentioned that he still felt like Chubb was working back. Chubb himself said he's still trying to get over the hump after the injury, and it just hasn't looked fast enough or agile enough to feel good about Nick Chubb in that running back 2 spot if Joe Mixon's absence is prolonged into the regular season. Now, my concern goes way down if Joe Mixon's just healthy week 1 against the LA Rams on the West Coast. My concern will go way, way down. But if Mixon gets dinged up, if the foot injury lingers, I don't know who the running back 2 is going to be. And as much as I like what Jawar Jordan has done up to this point, I would have a really hard time telling you that they should start Jawar Jordan week 1 against the LA Rams if Joe Mixon is not healthy. That would be not great. Maybe Nick Caserio can work a little bit of his magic, add another body to the running back room, or on cut down day, maybe there's a player that fits what they would need. Or maybe we're all just for Joe Mixon to be ready week 1. That'd be the ideal situation. So that's the best and worst of training camp for me up to this point. What's your best and worst? Let me know in the comment section down below on your way down there. Thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out SNL. Myself, Landry Locker from the Locker Room, each and every weekday at 4 p.m. We'll be live from West Virginia next week covering the team as they practice at the Greenbrier. And, of course, visit my friends at DraftKits.co. They are the best, man. Best in the business when it comes to taking your fantasy league to the tippity-top level. Appreciate you watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.